Hey, Gundam Maniacs, welcome to another episode of Gundam Explained. So it's come to this. It's come to a time where I finally review something other than UC. Now, I'm a UC fanboy because that's what I started with when I first got into Gundam just years ago. So here shortly, you're about to get a reaction of Gundam Wing from an adult that's watched Wing for the first time after getting into the UC timeline. Hey, and before we get started, if you like videos like this, please give it a subscribe. And as you're watching, it seems pretty cool. Also, yeah, give it a like. But let's get started. So Gundam Wing, right? So this isn't going to be like a full-on review of every episode and I dive deep into the plot, but I am going to talk about the plot a bit. I'm going to talk about characters. I'm going to talk about the mobile suit designs. I think this is going to be a really interesting video, if you're interested in my perspective, of course. So when it comes to Gundam, I mainly like UC. I love UC. I love how grounded it is. I love how it's taking Star Wars, but grounding it, and then it has mechs, and I'm a huge fan of mechs. So the thing about Gundam Wing, which is interesting, is I think I knew about it. In fact, I'm sure I knew about it when it came out here in the United States, except that I didn't really put together the Gundam thing. Because, yeah, I remember playing Rise of the Ashes on the Dreamcast, seeing the Toonami commercials at night, and Wing was a thing. I just never put it together that all this stuff was Gundam. So when it came to watching UC, or when it came to getting into Gundam watching UC, I was really surprised at how good it was. And then when I first was getting Gundam, I was like, well, let me watch an episode of Wing, since that's something I always heard of. And watching the first episode, I was like, no, this is not my thing. So what's interesting, though, about UC is it has all the elements I want. Like I said, it's a grounded sci-fi story, and it has mechs, right? So why is it that then the Gundam series has all these offshoots? Well, it's an interesting way to get creative, and I got a plot for that, because as interesting as Wing is and some of its choices, there's some entertainment to it. My quick take is I think this is a bad show. In fact, I wouldn't recommend it to anyone that's not familiar with Gundam. In fact, if someone is wanting to get into Gundam, I would have them start with something UC, or maybe some of the other stuff I haven't gotten to yet, like 00, IBO. It's just UC has so much lore. It can give someone enough time, like you can see with most of the videos on my channel, to dig into UC before getting into the AU stuff. So even though I was saying it's bad, for someone like me that has an interest in Gundam, and, you know, it's been a few years that I've gotten into it, and I really love UC, and I've dived into so much UC, I actually do appreciate some of the things that are going on in Wing. I think maybe intentionally when it was being made, it knew that it had a history, so it can kind of play around with the subject matter. And before I talk about what's bad about it, I want to kind of go over some of my observations. Okay, I want to dive into like the characters and the mobile suits, and, you know, sorry, I'm using Pinterest. We have the main characters. We have Hero, Duo, Troa, Quatre, Wu Fei, and then Zex. He's a main character, although he's a bad guy. Although I'd say he's a bad guy. Now the characters themselves, you know what? Sometimes in anime or in even Gundam UC, a character I can take him or leave him. It really just depends, as long as there are strong supporting characters, and that's the thing that Wing does have. Especially the women characters happen to be. I really like how they're written. I guess there seems to be a lot of depth to them as they're making the decisions and navigating the Gundam Wing universe. Hero is pretty interesting. He's almost bare bones in his, like, sort of his personality, and I think that is done maybe in a way. Sometimes this is done with, like, video games, too. It's so that you can insert yourself into that character. He kind of has a generic look to him, how he's kind of male, dark hair, etc. And his name is Hero. I didn't find him particularly interesting. There's some moments that he seemed pretty badass, I will say. Duo Maxwell, I would say he is one of, if not my favorite character. In fact, I think he helps really move the show along when he's actually in it. The voice acting, I think, there's something about it that makes you really engaged with the character, and he seems to be a good guy, and he seems to also be a badass at the same time. So I really like that character. Troa, take him or leave him. He had some interesting arcs that went on in the story, but nothing memorable. Now, Quatre. I like this character. It's very interesting. Not only is his name interesting, but even kind of the background of his character. The English voice acting is done by the Amuro Ray voice actor, so that was kind of a weird surprise, as I'm like hearing Amuro's voice and getting like these positive flashbacks, but realizing I'm watching Wing. You know, another thing about Quatre I really liked is he had kind of that Amuro way about him where he was kind of loud in how he spoke. It's like he spoke at the characters, and it was usually good things. I mean, he was not only was he a positive character, but he was pretty smart. He kind of understood what the next step needed to be. Wu Fei, I don't even remember much about him. He showed up. He seemed like he could take everybody on, and then he'd sometimes go off and do his thing. Not much to say. Now, Zex Marquise, very cool character. It's very, very reminiscent of Char. And you know what? In fact, even watching this, it really makes me think of how much Full Frontal seems to be based on Zex that's based on Char. There's just this through line with these Char clones in a way where, and it's cool though. It's really cool because it really made me engage with the character when he's trying to decide what to do, what his motivations were, very similar to Char. Him wanting to cause chaos and destruction near the end. It's almost like Wing, it almost plays like Char's arc in a way within the UC timeline. Okay, now we're going to look at suits. Spoilers, there's some Endless Waltz suits designs here, and I actually haven't even seen that yet. That'll be coming up shortly with a watch-along we're doing. But the normal Wing design of just the Wing suit, I do not care for at all. It does nothing. Now, Wing Zero, on the other hand, that's the one that I've talked about recently. I bought a kit, a Metal Robot Spirits. There's something about its transformation, its binders, that I really appreciate, even though with the colors and that big green gem in the middle kind of take away from a grounded weapon approach, and it goes more into the toy territory, but I was able to look past it. I don't know if it was from seeing it all the time when I'm looking up stuff that's related to Gundam and just Wing is there, or I just saw it under the right conditions. I don't know. So for Duo's mobile suits, Death Scythe is okay. And I just think the Death Scythe Hell looks just so much cooler. Other than that, there's not really much more yet that I can say. It's just pretty cool. You know, the thing is, and as we get through these suits, is the designs really lend themselves to toys in the first place. So I got to be able to look over that, appreciate it for what it is, what they're capable of, etc. Droid Barton, Heavy Arms. I think it's a pretty cool suit, but the colors and like that blue, for some reason, it like throws it off. And I don't know. I feel like this should be colored differently. Maybe have a different sort of pattern that's going on the chest and the shoulders. I don't know why, but that's just what's sticking with me. Sandrock. I think that suit's awesome. I didn't really get a feel of it until I watched Wing, but I will say that it reminds me of a Gunpla kit. Sometimes I won't appreciate a certain suit, a mobile suit, until I've built it. And I think that is what happened by watching Gundam Wing. I was able to appreciate the Sandrock suit. Just everything about it, it's very interesting. It's very Gundam, but it kind of takes it in its own direction. And the Kai, I didn't really notice much of a difference except it having that giant Uzi. That's pretty awesome. It didn't come with the high grade that I got. So the Shenlong, the Ultron, I didn't really seem to care for. In fact, I think that claw arm is goofy, even though claw arms can be good in Gundam and mobile suits. The Shenlong, the previous version, I think I liked that look. When I see model kit versions, I think it looks good, really good. But then the Ultron, not really into. And then the character's not that interesting, so yeah, I don't know. So the Tall Geese, this is another one that I would see all the time, but didn't really understand anything about it, right? And seeing it in context of Wing, I appreciate it. It's like the granddaddy mobile suit in the Wing timeline. This is kind of what, I guess that's what kicked off the design that you see like in the Leo, and then what's used for future mobile suits. Tall Geese 2, looks cool. There's even, I remember when I was watching it, there was a shot where you could see the face and it looked exactly like a Gundam without a V-fin. And I feel like that could be a really cool custom, and I'm sure people have done that. Okay, well, the suits and characters are out of the way. Well, I guess in terms of the main suits and characters, start with the intro music. It's always fun when you're getting into a Gundam and listening to the intro music. And while at first I didn't really care for it, after a while, it was pretty catchy. That intro is good, but that second intro, now that is a banger. And then when it comes to the music also, as I'm watching it, I loved the music, and I just weird because I don't think that it's like particularly like amazing music. It's just the right notes are put together to convey what it needs to. Like anytime the episode would start and it would play the same music every time, and then it would have the wing and show the title of the episode. that music was very Star Wars and very Zeta Gundam in terms of the camera, I say, is then like moving to the next scene where like you're in space or zooming into a ship or something. Kind of like that music, the orchestrated music that they use. I think it almost heightens the experience. If it was completely different music, I probably wouldn't have been as engaged. The music really helped here. And then there's some times where there was like battle music that was pretty interesting. It was like the same song just done with different instruments, different notes, and that's all pretty cool stuff. Like even the music after an episode when it's saying what's going to happen next time, and it's kind of like a jazzy version. Pretty cool stuff. So if you have any other suggestions of Gundam music or Gundam Wing music or covers, leave them in the comments. And what was cool about the beginning of the episodes, how it did its recap, really helped kind of get a gist of what's going on in that universe, where there's, just like you see, there's space colonies, there's Earth, there are these factions, and there's a conflict. What's interesting about this is the space colonies developed 5 different Gundams by these scientists. They were sent to Earth to kind of stop the Oz Foundation from their oppression against the space colonies. Now, that's different than the Alliance, which was part of Earth. Oz was just a separate entity that tried to take over space and Earth. Now, the famous scene, the birthday invitation scene, it's just as ridiculous as you may remember it. It was just one of many weird character interactions that I'm like, okay, what am I watching? But looking back, it's memeable. It's just funny. It's ridiculous. It just came out of nowhere, and that kind of set the stage for the next like 20-something episodes, where I really was having a hard time keeping interested. It just kept having these characters say they're going to do this, they're going to do that. And then as the Gundam pilots are meeting each other, I was a bit confused, and this could have been on me. I was just confused about, it seemed they didn't know each other for some reason, and they were fighting each other, and they didn't know what to do. Like, that kind of didn't make sense if there was this plan for the colonies to develop 5 Gundams that they send down at the same time to defend the colonies. So, yeah. But this character, Relena, I was saying a lot of the women characters in this are really good, and she is one that, it's pretty interesting. She kind of goes through a transformation in terms of she finds out who she really is, just like other Gundam and Star Wars kind of figure out who you're related to, main characters. So, that was a comfortable trope that allowed me to be a little more invested, even though I think that I don't want to call that lazy. I would just say that's like an easy way to make something interesting. So as you're watching it, you're kind of understanding what these factions are. There's Earth, there's these colonies, but then there's these other little splinter groups that sometimes people will leave and then join, and then leave and then join, and then someone was bad, that was good. There's a faction within the colonies called White Fang that ends up being a main antagonist, on top of Zex being an antagonist, Trace Kushanada being an antagonist as well. So it really put a lot on the table there. Lady Un, a great character. At first, I didn't know what was going on with her. One of our subscribers mentioned to me that she's bipolar, or has like multiple personalities, I guess. And I didn't really pick up on that first until then I got to the episode where they're kind of explaining it a bit more. And yes, she does have these multiple personalities. It's very interesting how different they both are. But she's still an interesting character because it looked like she wanted to carry things out correctly. She was being loyal, and there was a part where I thought, she was dead, but luckily she wasn't. She came back, and that was pretty epic. Same with Noin. Noin was another great character that, again, I think with all these characters, it's near the end of the series that they really grew into their characters and started making interesting choices that changed the rest of the series. Another interesting thing with the mobile suits is how often the Gundam pilots were piloting different Gundams. That's something that can happen in any Gundam, but it seemed, at first, it really seemed like the Gundam that belonged to the pilot wasn't necessarily their Gundam. But then sometimes as the show went, they would refer to as their Gundams. And then sometimes they would be in the other machines, I think the Taurus, which is one that I really like, and there's not even a model kit for it as far as I know. Yeah, it's this Oz, or another factory could be using it, like the Saint Kingdom, the 12 SMS Taurus. Really cool design because it reminds me of a lot of other Gundam from that era, like Victory, kind of the way those designs were. And I'm a sucker for flight modes, so obviously that's something I'd like. And then there's the white version, which I really like. I like the way it looks because this is very different than a Gundam design, but it's still a badass mech. And you would see that the mobile suit pilots or the Gundam pilots would actually use these mobile suits sometimes, not their own. Sometimes they'd be destroyed. That's what lends then to their new mobile suits being created. We get the Epion. So that's a suit that I had sort of seen, didn't really know where it came from. And, it has like dragon wings on it, which are pretty cool. It has that whip that looks like a dragon tail. So there's some really cool things and designs going on with it. It's cool that they used it. In fact, I think it was made for Hero, and then Zex got it, but then he went back to his Tallgeese. But another interesting aspect of this that kind of ties these things together is that Zero system. So it's kind of like the Saikamu that we would see in UC Gundam, where these specific units, the Wing Zero or the Epion, would then have a system that integrates with the mind of the pilot and kind of helps push them to their limits. In fact, sometimes it would tell them things, it seemed like, about their future, almost like it was giving them new type abilities at the moment, which I thought was kind of interesting. Just another interesting aspect that's kind of the fantasy element of this all. And I gotta say, there's some really cool things that this had. It was like the Peace Million like spacecraft, and then it had the Libra. And I thought it was pretty cool how like they crashed one into the other to destroy it. But then Zex wanted to send it all to the Earth to kill off everybody. So again, we're getting some super like UC Gundam vibes, Char vibes. And even when this battle was taking place, the mobile dolls, which I thought was pretty interesting aspect, that's where they're controlled either by an AI or by someone else like a computer. So we see that cerebral like system from X-Men. Character named Dorothy is another cool woman character in this, is wearing it, and she's like controlling the mobile dolls. And so yeah, we get these mobile suits that are like AI piloted, which is something that's new. And in fact, even in the show, they don't really explore it too much, but there's like conflict between pilotless or mobile suits with pilots, using them in battle. Could have been a kind of a cooler topic to dive more into, but it was cool that they touched on it anyway. And so it ends, obviously 49 episodes later. I think it's a satisfying conclusion. Obviously, I haven't seen Endless Waltz, but the idea that Zex could be out there, but Noin at least feels like he's still out there. Hero is still alive. I thought ending the episode with Relena ripping the invitation was hilarious. I almost feel like that was almost like it was self-aware to do that. I don't know. I know it could be just her getting back at him for doing that, but in terms of the show, I don't know. I feel like that was like a self-aware nod or something. So honestly, there's so much that could be talked about Wing. I even think my first watch through of it, I didn't catch everything. If there's things that are cool parts about Wing and I didn't mention it, please let me know in the comments, because I want to explore more. There will be future videos about Wing. And really, I think it's something you need to watch more than once to really get everything. Can I really stomach the first part of the season? It's something nice to have on in the background while building a Gunpla. But, it reminds me of how many times I've watched the original 0079 or Zeta or Double Zeta. I've watched those multiple times, and they're really good. And you need to watch them multiple times to really soak in all the information. With Wing, it's a little harder. The beginning is just, it's not too good. And even I would say throughout, most of the voice acting is not great. So if I was to watch it again, it would be, I want to gather some more information of it, but it's hard to because it's Wing. And I still have Endless Waltz to watch. So everybody watching, let me know what you think about my take of Wing. I can understand the aspect of nostalgia for liking it. But I also think that it has a charm to it if you are already a Gundam fan. So yeah, those are the two, I think, key aspects that would really get you into it. Is it's just something you watched when you were younger because it was on TV, or you're familiar with Gundam and you just kind of want to see Gundam used in a very unique, cheesy, kind of corny way. That doesn't take itself seriously, but it has good animation, good fight scenes. I would even say the mobile suits are okay, and the Gundam designs are probably the weakest part of it. And I don't know if that's crazy for me to say, although I do appreciate them, and some are cool for sure. But anyway, that is my take on Gundam Wing. Finally watching the 49 episodes after first getting into Gundam back in 2019. Let me know what you think. Is it your favorite series? Did you get into Wing and never get into anything else, and you still love Wing? I'm curious. I'm curious about that. But anyway, thanks for watching. We'll talk later.